If you're like most people, whenever you start a diet, it becomes a gut-wrenching process where you cut out all your favorite foods, crush yourself with brutal workouts, and hate every step of the process until you finally give up. And while dieting may never be the easiest thing in the world, that doesn't mean it has to be a drudgery either. So today I'm going to show you how to make your diet easier so you can finally lose the weight and keep it off.
Hey, this is Colin DeWaay. If you want to master your metabolism and create forever results, start now by subscribing and click on that bell notification so you don't miss anything. All right, let's dig in, but real quick, make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I'm not only going to cover a lot of physical things you can do to make your diet easier, but I'm also going to cover a lot of important mindset shifts you have to make as well, which is arguably more important. Now, the first thing I want you to consider when starting a diet is how likely is it what you're currently doing going to be something that you're going to be able to do long term. So many people start a diet and just end up starving themselves or cutting out all their favorite foods or even entire macronutrients, and how likely is it you're going to keep that up? And hey, if you do this, it's not all your fault. Everywhere you look, people are saying, eat this, don't eat that. This certain food will make you fat, this one makes you thin. But honestly, that's just not how it works. Yes, eating things like veggies is helpful when it comes to fat loss, but that's because they are low calorie and filling, and therefore you end up eating less total calories. And when you eat less calories, this ends up putting you in a calorie deficit, and that's why you lose weight. At the end of the day, no matter how you get there, a calorie deficit is what's going to get you to lose weight. So while nutrient-dense foods like veggies are very helpful and should make up a big portion of your diet, that doesn't mean eating something else that you like ice cream, is going to keep you from losing weight as long as you account for it. In fact, I argue the reason very few people lose weight and actually keep it off is because of the poor relationship they build with food by looking at foods as either good or bad. Foods don't have morality, it's just food. And if you look at food as either good or bad, what ends up happening is you take away those foods and you feel like you shouldn't have them. You end up focusing on wanting them all the time because you told yourself you can't have them. And when you do eventually have it, you have no off button because you feel like, hey, I'm starting my diet again tomorrow. I need to get in as much of it in as possible right now before it starts all over again tomorrow. And this cycle just repeats itself. And then what ends up happening? You beat yourself up about it, you feel guilty, it turns into this big shame spiral, and it just continues and gets even worse until you usually eventually just give up. But what if you just decided to have some food that you enjoy and just include it in your diet and account for it? What if you didn't feel guilty over eating foods that you enjoy? Unless you're planning on never having a certain food again for the rest of your life, you're probably better off learning how to include it in your diet in a reasonable way rather than focusing on excluding it. And if you're including foods that you enjoy, don't you think that's going to make your diet easier to stick to? Okay, with that out of the way, one simple tip you can use to make dieting easier is to plan your meals in advance. Planning ahead just makes it more likely for you to have success because unless you have a lot of experience with tracking, just winging it leaves you very vulnerable to overshoot your calories. Not only does this set you up for success, but it's also one less thing that you have to stress about throughout your busy day. You don't have to worry about it anymore because it's already planned for you. And oftentimes when we do go off plan, it's because we do get overwhelmed by the day. Take a little time the night before to set things up and you'll thank yourself later. Now, along those same lines, another way you can set yourself up for success is to have repeatable meals. This is where you have maybe a meal or two that you basically eat the same thing every single day. And while I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive what I talked about in the beginning of this video, hear me out. If you're eating the same things, it's one less thing to worry about again. It's just something that's already set. You don't have to deal with it. You don't have to stress out about it. And it just sets you up for success. You just have to remember this isn't something you have to do. It's something you're choosing to do. And there's a huge difference between choosing to do it and feeling like you have to do it. Because if you feel you have to do it, you're much more likely to rebel against it. And once you get sick of that meal, you can just go ahead and change it to something else. Now that I'm deep into my show prep and calories are much lower, taking this strategy has really helped me out a lot. I typically eat basically the exact same thing for breakfast and lunch every single day, and then I have dinner with my family, which is more variable, and then my last meal of the day is typically similar foods, but I just change portion sizes to make it work into my numbers. And I almost always have it all planned out the night before, so it's all set up for me the following day, and it really only takes me about 5 minutes, if even, to plug it all in just because I'm so consistent with what I do now. And what's helpful for me is mentally, I just realized that, hey, this is a temporary thing to get through this show prep, and eventually I will go into a reverse diet. My calories will come up, my cardio will come down, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, the next thing you can, and in my opinion, should do to make dieting easier and see better results is to incorporate things like refeeds and diet breaks. See, your metabolism is adaptive, and the longer you diet, the more these adaptations happen, and there's a lot of hormonal and metabolic metabolic things that do occur, and taking these breaks can help offset some of those a little bit and help the diet go better. So giving your body a break by increasing calories, typically mostly through carbohydrates, can really help keep you in a good spot metabolically and also help you feel better, thus making dieting easier. Not only that, but by taking breaks, you're also going to be able to enjoy more food, not feel like you're dieting all the time, and just really help with the mental side of things. Trust me, just beating yourself into the ground all the time is not a recipe for success for very many people. How do you set up refeeds and diet breaks? Well, I actually have a video titled Carb Cycling for Fat Loss that I'll put in the description of this video that you can check out after this video is done if you want more detail. All right, another tip, and probably one of the best things you can possibly do for yourself to make dieting easier, is to get yourself a good coach. There's a reason, even as a coach myself, that I have a coach, and that's because it's just so hard to be objective with yourself, and all the knowledge in the world does nothing for you if you can't take your emotions out of it. So not only do you get the benefit of somebody who knows more than you guiding you through the process, but you also get to detach yourself from the results and worrying about if you should be doing this or if you shouldn't be doing it or if the results are reasonable for what you're doing. You can take that all off your plate and let them worry about it. So not only is it mentally freeing to be able to do that, but also just having that extra accountability can go a long ways. Now don't go anywhere, because this next part is arguably the most important part of making your diet easier, and that's the mental side of things. A huge mistake a lot of people make is when they start a diet, they don't go all in the process and they just end up fighting themselves. Now, a lot of people confuse what I mean when I say all in, so I want to make this clear. All in doesn't mean you punt everything else in life and the only thing that matters is fitness. In fact, that's a great way to make sure you hate the process and end up failing. What you need to do is go all in without going all or nothing. All in just means you're committed to making these lifestyle changes that are required for you to get the results that you want. You can't fight yourself all the time and wish you didn't have to pay attention to your nutrition and wish you didn't have to go to the gym. Because I promise, if you end up spending all your time wishing that things were different, you will end up losing, because you cannot win against reality. And the more you fight it, the more miserable you will be. But when you accept that reality, it actually excites you. You feel good about it. You know that good things are coming your way, and you just cannot go through a miserable process and be happy. There's literally no such thing as a happy ending to an unhappy journey. Also, it's really important to hold yourself accountable to what you said you would do, but not overjudge yourself and beat yourself up when things don't go well. You're gonna mess up sometimes. You're going to. It's just how it works. You are human, so you need to be okay with that, but just learn from it and move forward. Do not dwell on your mistakes. It does no good. Trust me, beating yourself up will do way more harm than any amount of overeating that you can do in a day, a weekend, or even a week. Now, this doesn't mean you should just give yourself the okay to constantly be off and never stick to the plan, but you also have to be kind to yourself. I look at it this way. If what you say to yourself is not something that you would say to someone you love, you should not be saying it to yourself either. Okay, another really important thing to remember is that this is temporary, right? Your dieting phase where you're actually trying to lose weight is not something that will last forever. What this means is you can and should reverse diet when you're done, so your calories will come up and your cardio will come down. So while I'm all for sustainability, understand that especially in the deeper stages of a cut, when calories are low and cardio is high, that portion is not going to be sustainable. It's going to be difficult, and you have to get through it. That portion is all about grit and perseverance and just seeing it through. And once you do that, everything changes. Okay, one more super important thing here. You need to make sure that once you lose the weight, you can actually keep the weight off long term. Research has actually shown that 95% of people who lose weight end up putting it back on at some point. So to make sure that isn't you, make sure you check out this video, and I'll talk about all the things that you need to consider to make sure you lose the weight and keep it off forever. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.